Howdy everyone, welcome back to Hex Hunter. We are covering the final half of our first draft in the Hex Budget Challenge. To catch up a little bit if this happens to be just where you're first entering in, we started off doing our starter trials, got a hold of the initial pack, and we are prepared to go do the next two games in the starter trial after the patch King Gabriel. But before we did that, we moved on to our first Swiss draft, where we did a bit of a schizophrenic draft, but we tried pulling together a blood and orc ruby style of deck and tried to make a little bit of use of Lionel Flynn. We've had mixed results so far in round 1, and now we're moving on to round 2. So we've got a couple interesting games here, a little bit more interesting than what we found in round 1. Definitely something worth watching, but we had a first set of music that we couldn't actually license here for YouTube, so we're going to make sure that we've got a little bit of music going over while we have this going at a quicker speed. We'll do a little bit of a wrap up towards the end, but until then, enjoy the video. So a couple of the things we ended up learning in this draft were really valuable. One is that when you're going through and drafting, you want to keep on a very consistent methodology when you're doing your picks. You generally do want to pick the best card that's there in the pack, but the best card, that qualifier actually changes dramatically depending on what style of deck you're picking. So the best card's not always going to be the rare, nor is it always going to be the most specifically most powerful card. But what it is going to be is it's going to be the most powerful card that forwards your strategy. And both of the losses that we experienced in round 1 and round 2 really tell us that that is the case, because if we had picked the cards that would have forwarded our strategy more, we would have had the tools necessary to deal with the Shinhair going crazy in round 1 and to deal with the control that really came around in round 2. So both of those decks were not terrible decks. They weren't poorly drafted decks, but because of how we drafted, what we found was we had an inconsistent deck that had a huge top-end power level with Zoltog and when everything synergized correctly, and then it was just dysfunctional if that was not pulled together. What would have pulled everything together a little bit more is if we had pulled a lot more of the Blood Orcs, like the Priestesses, which would have given us more consistency, or focused more specifically on a line of Flynn style of deck and taking the Orcs that we could have put the proper gems on, or maybe taken like the Effigies when they came around. We would have been a lot less dysfunctional as a deck, and more importantly, we would have been much more consistent in bringing aggro and power to the table and outspeed the control and outspeed the blockers of the Shinhair. But you see, that's what we've learned at this point, is that when you are drafting in an attempt to win, it's not just picking the best card or the card you don't want to really play against. It's more specifically first picking the best card that advances your emerging strategy. This seems very basic, but it's very easy to lose track of this once you've gathered a lot of knowledge about the cards, you've seen a lot of different strategies that can come around, and if you're not really set in your decision making after your first 6 or 7 picks, it's very easy to get distracted while you are coming across good, new, and interesting cards. And this is definitely something we'll want to take into set 2 when it comes around in a couple months, because we're going to be exposed to a huge array of cards, brand new powers and abilities, and that's going to affect our drafting going forward. And the more focused we can be on the strategies we see emerging from the packs, the more powerful we can make our decks, and the more profitable we can be drafting going forward. I want to thank everyone for watching. Thanks for putting up with the music in between. We'll be doing an updated Hex Budget Challenge here as soon as tournaments are back up after the King Gabriel patch. Thank you all for watching. Be sure that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more updates.